Welcome to Trial Site News Weekly Roundup. My name is Adrian, and I'll be going over some of our top news stories from this past week. Please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of future videos. Also, if you'd like to skip ahead at any point in this video, these are the timestamps for all the topics on our video today. This week we start our roundup with clinical trial-related news stories. First up today, Johns Hopkins led a sizable research effort analyzing 277 clinical trials based on 24 different vitamin and supplemental interventions. The results: the research team cannot link supplements or diets to a longer life or protection from heart disease. Although the team determined that no harm appears to result from a plethora of vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients, supplements, or diets, they also didn't find the direct link to an extension of life or a reduction in heart disease, reports Science Daily. The analysis did reveal, however, that possible health benefits for the following: low-salt diet, omega-3 fatty acid supplements, and folic acid supplements for some people. Now, interestingly, this meta-analysis revealed that some supplements combining calcium and vitamin D may in fact be linked to a slight increase in stroke risk. The Johns Hopkins team used data from the above-mentioned and 8 diets for their association with mortality or heart conditions, including coronary heart disease, stroke, and heart attack. The meta-analysis incorporated data gathered on 992,129 research participants worldwide. Now, moving on to more clinical trial news. In traditional drug development, it takes 10 to 15 years, give or take, to take a drug through research to marketing approval. Also, costs range from $1.5 to $2 billion, although with the increasing use of fast-track status, that could be changing. Artificial intelligence could improve key parts of the clinical trials process with an important emphasis on site selection and patient recruitment, not to mention patient monitoring. Published in Trends in Pharmaceutical Sciences reveals that despite ever-growing investments, not to mention many improved processes and purpose-built trial management systems, clinical trials still have even higher failure rates. Now, why do clinical trials fail? The authors of the study argue that failures are mainly due to poor recruiting and selecting techniques, as well as the inability to effectively monitor patients. The IBM study team introduces artificial intelligence tools such as Watson, a viable way to improve these processes and increase clinical trial success rates. If you'd like to learn more, contact us or visit the website, as we are accumulating more information on this subject. And if you're interested in learning more, we are more than happy to share. Approved in Sweden, the Swedish Medical Products Agency approved the first-in-human trial of a first-in-class ILP-100 topical wound care therapy. The investigational treatment is administered topically at the actual wound site. Hence, ILP-100 represents both a novel drug delivery technology and a novel investigational new product, and is classified as a low-risk candidate under the gene therapy umbrella by the FDA. This first-in-human Phase 1 clinical trial will contain 2 parts, including 1, a single ascending dose part, and 2, a multi-ascending dose part with a total of 36 healthy volunteers to be included. The study will be conducted in Uppsala, Sweden, at the Phase 1 unit at Uppsala University Hospital. Now, meanwhile, in other clinical trial-related news, Craig McDonald, MD, and National Principal Investigator for the HOPE-2 clinical trial report that outcomes from the interim analysis of the investigational drug CAP-1002 are exhibiting clinically relevant outcomes. In the interim analysis, top-line data from a total of 17 patients were analyzed in the pre-protocol population, or 10 placebos and 7 treated, at the 3-month time point, and 12 patients, 6 placebos and 6 treated, were analyzed at the 6-month time point. Approximately 80% of the patients were non-ambulant. Demographic and baseline characteristics were similar between the 2 treatment groups. The investigators and industry sponsor behind the investigational drug, Capricor Therapeutics, or CAPR, CAPR, also delineate a summary of interim analysis by skeletal assessments and pulmonary assessments and cardiac assessments. To reduce the risk of future adverse events, the sponsor initiated a commonly used pre-medication strategy, including intravenous steroids and antihistamines to prevent or mitigate potential immune reactions during the administration. Since the initiation of the pre-treatment regimen, 30 infusions of the investigational drug CAP-1002, or placebo, have been administered to HOPE-2 patients, with only one serious adverse event reported that required an overnight observation of the patient. Now, in other clinical trial news, recently the Upper West Regional Hospital leadership fired their medical director and finance director due to what appears to be corrupt practices involving misappropriation and misapplication of the hospital's finances. Apparently, the Ghana Health Service was investigating the duo at the Upper West Regional Hospital and had a written communication essentially articulating the need for the firing of the culprits due to a violation of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, or Act 912. Not to mention a breach of established policy and procedure associated with the Ghana Health Service. Which brings us to clinical research in Ghana. We here at Trial Site News are bullish long-term about the clinical research prospects for this dynamic, diverse, and growing West African nation. Ghana is an interesting place, where independence was achieved not via armed insurrection, but via a white paper articulating the case for independence, which was successful and the British moved on. This is unheard of. Now, clinical trials in Ghana goes back to the 1970s, when primarily intervention trials against onchocerciasis and childhood Burkitt's lymphoma were conducted, giving way to a more diversified base of studies in the 1980s and 1990s involving therapeutic interventions against major communicable diseases, for example. Post-year 2000, a number of intervention trials targeting malaria saw some success, including some vaccine development. Now, over the past decades, academics George O. Adjai and Abdul M. Soli, researching Ghana's clinical research, say they found a consistent presence of reproductive health intervention and surgically related clinical trials have been common. Less commonly, sponsors studied tuberculosis and non-neonatal related interventions, while trials against non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, and mental health disorders have been nearly non-existent. Generally, Adjai and Soli report that clinical research in Ghana has followed a somewhat predictable trajectory of following global health initiatives and external funding exigencies. Today, there are pressing needs for clinical research as care options, especially with non-communicable disease causing morbidity and mortality. We found a total of 18 active clinical trials. However, there could be more. Ghana has hosted at least 120 clinical trials and has dozens of prominent academic medical centers prominently engaged with international clinical trial sponsors. Although clinical research in Africa hasn't always had the greatest brand for a variety of complex reasons, research will continue to grow and thrive. Research institutions will become accredited and increasingly structured multi-year research programs with commercial, academic, and government sponsors. And of course, we here at Trial Site News will keep an eye on this as it develops. And in our final clinical trials related story, Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety approved NUNAP's clinical trial of NUNAP Vision, a digital therapeutics for improving visual disorders after brain injury. The green light indicates the go-ahead for Korea's first clinical trial of a digital treatment. Digital therapies represents a growing phenomena, especially in Asia, where use of smartphone apps is pervasive. Clinical investigator sites. The clinical research effort will occur at prominent Korean clinical investigator sites, including Asian Medical Center, Samsung Medical Center, and Seoul National University Bundang Hospital. The sponsor will work with the research site to test the effectiveness and safety of the NUNAP Vision program. NUNAP CEO Kwang Dong-hwa reports his company is well positioned for success. He noted, and I quote, that the company expects to take a leading position in the global market after completing a large-scale clinical trial. He continued that the approval of the new clinical trial will become the first step in securing the local market dominance for digital therapy. We'll keep an eye on this story as it continues to develop. And now to clinical challenge-related news. Hahnemann University Hospital, a 496-bed academic medical center in Philadelphia, will close amid ongoing financial crisis. Partnered with Drexel, it has served as a teaching hospital. The hospital in Clinical Central City, Philadelphia, was a health access nexus and clinical trials research site. The system's owner, American Academic Health System, revealed in April of 2019 that the system is losing $3 to $5 million a month. The ownership announced layoffs to cut costs and proposed what they called a pathway to stability, which included requiring support from government, insurers, and its academic partner, Philadelphia-based Drexel University. Now, Drexel responded with a lawsuit seeking to block American Academic Health System closing of Hahnemann. Shortly thereafter, a Philadelphia judge rejected Drexel's request, and finally, by June 26, Academic Health System announced the hospital was to be closed by September. Since then, a protest movement has swelled in hopes of saving the institution and its jobs. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf and Philadelphia Jim Kenney issued a scathing news release declaring that the hospital closure is driven by greed, reports Kelly Gooch of Becker's Hospital Review. This facility is a research site, and many clinical trials have been conducted there. Based on the dire economic conditions, they are moved on to the Trial Site News Challenged Sitewatch list. And now we move on to autoimmune-related news. The College of Medical Sciences, Bharupta, Nepal, conducted a study that links hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, with thyroid disorders. Apparently, a significantly higher prevalence of thyroid disorders was found among patients with HS, and a research letter published in the Journal of American Academy Director encouraged more research. Prakash Acharya, MBBS, MD, and Mahesh Martha, MD, DCP, both wrote that although HS is thought to be an autoinflammatory disease in contrast to the autoimmune nature of thyroid disorders, production of inflammatory cytokines such as tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin-1 beta in HS could trigger the autoimmune process of thyroid disorders in susceptible individuals. The study was not able to accomplish subgroup analysis based on severity and duration of HS due to inefficient data. Another limitation involved the fact that separate analysis according to the type of thyroid disorder were not performed, and presents another limitation. Meanwhile, in other autoimmune-related news, New Zealand's Malagan Institute is seeking healthy volunteers to take part in a clinical trial designed to explore the therapeutic potential of human hookworms. The study is funded by the Health Research Council and in collaboration with the University of Otago Wellington. The trial's ultimate aim is to find better treatment options for a range of inflammatory and autoimmune diseases, including celiac, asthma, allergy, MS, and inflammatory bowel disease. The Institute is seeking up to 15 Wellington-based volunteers aged between 18 and 65 years for the trial, who will be infected with a low, safe dose of Necator americanus larvae and studied over the course of a year. The participants will be compensated, and we'll keep an eye on the story as it progresses. Now we switch gears to cancer-related news stories. A leading T-cell receptor biotech company, Immunocore Limited, and Pulse Infoframe Inc., or Pulse, a data aggregation and analytics company, announced plans to support the world's first uveal melanoma, or patient registry. The registry will help generate insights that will offer therapy developers a more comprehensive understanding of the disease and may help to shape the way future research is conducted. Now, who is participating to develop and maintain the registry? Well, leading clinical investigators and research centers from the nexus of the new registry. Members include Richard Carvajal, MD, Director of Experimental Therapeutics and Director of the Melanoma Service, Columbia University Medical Center, New York, New York. Joseph Sockel, PhD, Clinical Senior Lecturer at the University of Liverpool and Honorary Consultant in Medical Oncology, Clatterbridge Cancer Center, UK. And Anthony Joshua, MBBS, PhD, Director of Cancer Services at St. Vincent's Hospital and Conjoint Associate Professor with the University of South Wales, Australia. The goal is to create a benchmark framework, or ecosystem, for collecting and assessing clinical outcomes, as well as providing necessary data for future genetic, subphenotype, and biomarker research. And we'll keep an eye on the story as well as it progresses. Now, elsewhere, Elios Therapeutics announced positive top-line results from a Phase 2b clinical trial evaluating its lead immuno-oncology candidate. The TLPLDC, or tumor lysate particle-loaded dendritic cell vaccine in patients with stage 3 and 4 resected melanoma. An initial assessment of 36-month follow-up data on all patients indicates that the TLP-LDC vaccine benefit is not only durable, but continues to show benefit beyond 24 months. No safety concerns were identified, with only 1/3 of patients experiencing a related adverse event, or AE, the majority of which were grade 1 or 2. As a result of this data, the Data Safely Monitoring Board for the trial recommended that the study continued as designed to the 36-month landmark endpoints of DFS and overall survival anticipated into June 2020. In other related news, a phase 1 clinical trial evidenced meaningful data points as more than half of pancreatic adenocarcinoma patients showed positive clinical responses when treated with an investigational multi-antigen specific T-cell therapy. The study included 3 treatment arms in which investigators evaluated the safety and feasibility of multi-TAA T cells as well as progression-free and overall survival. Arm A includes patients with unresectable or metastatic pancreatic adenocarcinoma whose disease responds to first-line chemotherapy. Arm B comprised of patients with a progressive refractory disease after first-line chemotherapy, and Arm C included patients with potentially resectable disease. Brandon G. Smaglo, MD, FACP, told Journal Cell that there is a dire need for better systemic therapies in all stages of pancreatic cancer. And there is a need for the systemic therapies to be better tolerated than the current standards of 2 or 3 chemotherapy drug combination regimens. Dr. Smaglo continued. He said, our approach is novel because unlike CAR T-cell approach, the T-cells we are using are non-engineered. They are cultured in a mixture with the antigens we intend for them to target so that they can naturally acquire these features. He continued that it is important that potential patients be identified early so that when the T-cells are needed for use, they are ready. Funding for the clinical research provided by the V Foundation and the Pancreatic Cancer Network infusions of non-engineered multi-antigen specific T-cell therapy appeared to be safe and tolerable for patients with pancreatic cancer. No patients in the study experienced infusion-related systemic toxicity or neurotoxicity. Good stuff, and we'll keep you informed on how this continues. And now for a story related to neurodegenerative disease. Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals announced that it is permanently discontinuing its phase 2 study, Penn, assessing the efficacy and safety of Acthar gel, otherwise known as repository corticotropin injection for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. This decision was made after the study's independent data and safety monitoring board recommended the trial be halted due to concerns over patients developing pneumonia following treatment with Acthar gel. The recommendation was based on the specific concern for pneumonia, which occurred at a higher rate in the ALS patients receiving Acthar gel compared to those on the placebos. The board also mentioned other adverse effects specific to this patient population. Enrollment in the study will cease immediately, and those patients already enrolled will be tapered off the drug before discontinuing use. We'll keep you posted on the story as it continues. Turning now to Clinical Ventures news stories. AbbVie does very well with Humira, but it comes out of patent soon. So, biopharma startups developing cancer therapies are in high demand as the growing industry vies for bigger and more valuable pipelines. Seattle-based privately held Mavu Pharma was the latest to feel the demand with its acquisition by AbbVie, which seeks to bolster its early-stage oncology pipeline. AbbVie, seeking to diversify as well from dependence on its blockbuster Humira, now owns Mavu 104, an orally active small molecule that inhibits an enzyme involved in the regulation of the STING pathway, known as NP1. AbbVie seeks to prepare for a robust future with its oncology pipeline. It has struggled as of late, its stock underperforming against the broader biopharma industry averages. Oncology represents a major driver moving forward. Biopharmas, especially the big ones, are vying for bigger and more extensive pipelines. Hundreds of new immune oncology hopefuls get moved into clinical testing. Last year, trade association Pharma reported 1,120 oncology drugs in clinical trials, a huge increase from just a few years ago. This just represents the US. When factoring in Europe and China, the numbers become historically staggering. As of last year, pharma counted over 300 immuno-oncology drugs or vaccines. Immuno-oncology includes CAR-T, bispecific antibodies, cytokine therapies, immune checkpoint modulators, oncolytic virus therapies, and vaccines. And finally, this next story, Cenexcel Clinical Research Inc., was formed based on the merger of Salt Lake City, Utah-based JBR Clinical Research, specializing in analgesia research and vaccine testing, and ACMR, an Atlanta-based psychiatric research facility. Cenexcel now has united 4 top U.S. clinical research facilities to offer new clinical investigational site services to reduce time and cost for commercial drug sponsors. This alliance is in response to growing competition and consolidation among clinical research sites, fueled by growing private equity capital flows. Now, who are the Cenexcel participants? Well, JBR Clinical Research, Utah-based research site, Atlanta Center for Medical Research, a large dedicated research CNS site in Atlanta and possibly the largest in the U.S., Anaheim Clinical Trials ACT Commercial Clinical Investigational Site based in California was acquired by Gene Brown early 2019, and CBH Health Research Center in Maryland with a focus on CNS. By uniting 4 of the most experienced clinical research sites in the country, they seek to help sponsors improve the design and execution of Phase 1 through 4 trials, including Phase 1 studies and patient populations to help industry sponsors improve the time and cost of new therapy development for better patient care. This news reflects the growing competitive nature of managing a clinical research site. Biopharma sponsors and CRO clients expect an ever-growing list of more sophisticated, specialized services. Moreover, with lots of private equity circling around research sites, we will see more mergers and acquisitions. Trial Site News will monitor these emerging competitive roll-ups carefully. And that wraps up our weekly newscast for this week. Do you have any clinical news you'd like us to report on? If so, let us know. Contact information is in the box below. Thank you for joining us for this week's Trial Site News Roundup. And remember, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of updates. We'll see you next time.